Aux hommes citoyens, formez-vous bataillons, marchons, marchons, qu'on sanguine pure, oh brave nous séons. Let the rich and powerful know that the people have ways of dealing with oppressors.
Narrative inquiry focuses on the organization of human knowledge and allows the educational researcher to say, "What I know matters," as they transfer knowledge through a constructed story. Researchers who employ qualitative methods admit the complex and intertwined nature of the story one tells about their experience. Using a vision of narrative inquiry's conceptual framework that finds its footing in Dewey's analysis of experience, the cornerstone of described experience is interaction, a person's connection to their social context, and continuity, which speaks to a story's transcending capacity to exist in multiple temporal dimensions. Clandidin also points to another corollary of Brunner's work, that narrative is a mode of knowing, so really and truly, experience can be expressed as a story or narrative. My objective in this reflective project is to employ the philosophical tools to go about listening, making sense of, and generating meaning and purpose from the collection of stories recounted by myself and other participants, my past students, in a careful negotiation that must consider in varying degrees time, place, and space in the educational context. For this final reflective project, my research question or point of departure was, why? Why did I abandon a beloved unit lesson plan after the second failed attempt? First of all, I was inspired by a course at SFU, Simon Fraser University, on movement in education, which helped us understand ways of incorporating dance and elements of movement in any teachable subject. Through this course, I developed a history unit in French, which was designed to have the students using drama and dance to narrate and study the intense events of the French Revolution. The first time I implemented this unit with my grade 9 students in Vancouver, BC, was extremely positive, and I expected this to repeat itself when I moved to a suburb of Detroit to a private school for gifted learners in 2011. As I'm about to narrate, this was not the case. This is my story. A mild spring day in southeast Michigan, watching my students reluctantly drag their feet across the 100-year-old dance floor of the Roper School. It was already so hard to persuade the dance teacher to collaborate with us and use the room. Didn't they appreciate my effort to do something different? Sandy finally got excited and offered to do the first session, sharing about the history of ballet in the courts of Le Roi Soleil, Louis XIV, and some basic positions of ballet. Didn't they appreciate this cross-curricular moment? By the first week, we had gone through most of the important events of the French Revolution, what it was. A bloody, politically bold, peasant-driven ravaging and undoing of injustice. Men, women, and children marched, killed, and beheaded any tyrant that dared to force unfair practices on their daily lives. But on the hardest days, these middle school protesters looked like the peasant forces seeking a bloody revenge on tyranny. But didn't they know I was no tyrant? Didn't they realize I didn't mean to force the unit on them? I thought it was for their good. Disdain-filled expressions coming from every corner of the classroom, and I with my head on the guillotine of pedagogy, trying to keep an enthusiastic smile on my face. Didn't I tell them my students before had loved it and that they would too? And then parents got involved. One particular influential mother said that the students were uncomfortable and in a socially compromising situation. When my director requested to meet with me, I was surprised, and she said to keep trying. I heard these words, but it wasn't enough. Now I just wanted to finish, to prove a point. We eventually made it to the end of what was weeks of anxiety on so many levels. Never again. Let them eat cake. On to the next unit. I should have just given them a worksheet or something. Remember about it.
So I remember that we went to the dance room. I remember that we learned ballet and we learned the origins of ballet, and I remember somehow there was some kind of integration with the French Revolution, but I don't remember any of the other details at all.
Do you remember what the final project was for that unit?
I remember we had to compose a dance, and I think I was in a group with Ryan, but I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm. And how did you feel about? Did it feel? What were your feelings in general?
I'm not a big fan of dance, so I was not a huge fan of the project, but I thought it was an interesting way to. Sorry, I remember like little weird details, like we had to take off our shoes and stuff, and then someone like dragged the floor across the chair, a chair across the floor, and Sandy, the dance teacher, got like really mad, but I don't remember like most of the things that I was supposed to retain from it, but I think probably I remember the details of the French Revolution. I don't know.
Of course, that somewhat bothered me, as I saw it as a symptom of the social gender divide that was engendered by separation since young age, which I have written about rather well, I would judge it, which had always tormented me since a young age, since I found, by virtue of my circumstances, that it was generally females I was friends with. Yet there was always, at a young age, a sort of divide, often in a confidentiality of association between the genders. I do not recall if it was for that reason or for some other reason that I wanted to switch groups. And I seem to recall trying to organize that with you. I spoke to one of the people from the other group so that the groups could be, in some respect, mixed. That person, I don't think I ought to name her.
Please don't. But it was a she.
Yes. Her father was good enough, but I was, yes. But back to the point.
Your lineage
yes,
thing.
I was about to.
No names nor lineages. How about that?
Of course, I would never reveal that she was descended from this person.
You might.
I might.
Yes.
But back to the point. As I recall, she was opposed to it because
to having you in the group.
Having me in the group, yes, because for whatever reason she wanted to maintain the group all female, which infuriated me. I think we had.
At the time you were 12. I'm just trying to remember. You're about 12. Yeah, 12 years old.
We had the three. I remember speaking with you outside about the subject. You were speaking in French, I was speaking in English. I was rather upset. I don't remember exactly what the conversation was about. But
I remember you being upset, but I don't remember.
On my way walking up, I passed the particular girl I had spoken to and scornfully said, ignorant. Upset as I was. Of course, it's not my usual policy to so jab at the person.
Do you remember what I said to you? Do you remember?
I don't. I don't remember.
Did we come to?
We must have, because the result was that I did the project independently, where I wrote a dance and I described what it represented, and it was I think it was to the minuet from Bach's suite in B minor for orchestra. It has a lovely flute part, and it was somewhat waltz-like, involving various flourishes, and I was attempting to portray the dancing of the aristocrats at Versailles. But of course, no one performed it. I didn't perform it.
That still happens. I do. I'll have to dig it out.
I think overall it was a pretty cool experience because I thought just how the units worked in general was a really interesting experience. A lot of the Roper kids, they will tell you if they do not like something, and in some cases we did not like things, and we'd be like, no, I don't want to do this today, but I feel like for the most part, you kind of had to like it by the end, or at least you grew to accept it. So,
Wow, I learned so much from these interviews. Anything
Some important questioning happened during and toward the end of this reflective project. First of all, I questioned my negative feelings communicated in my initial story. This is because I began to think a little bit more about the educational environment where I teach and the social structures and relationships that exist there, including student to student, student to teacher, student to parents and administrators, teacher to parents and administrators, and all of these within the relationship of what is taught, the subject matter, and how it is taught. So I thought about my teaching philosophy and my teaching practices. But from recounting my own story and listening to my students' stories, I feel that experience, memory, and the narration of these things are better articulated with artifacts of corroboration. That being said, certain themes emerged from listening carefully to my students' stories. One student who asked not to be videoed, the student whose mother I anonymously mentioned in my story, expressed his frustration of the unit was because of fear of dance and performance given his visible weight issue. That made me think more about how students were able to communicate with the responsible adults in their light when faced with frustrations. By listening to my students, I also learned that it was actually a gender discrimination issue that turned him off to the assignment, and not so much the topic or how it was being taught. But what surprised me the most was that through these videos, and also through conversations outside of these videos, most of the students held pleasant memories of the experience, although they were aware of the tensive atmosphere at times. I'd like to come back to my initial question as to why I abandoned the unit, and the thoughts that came about through my own story and listening to other student stories in the form of a haiku. This haiku, in a sense, takes me from prose to poetry, another way of rewriting that initial story. Beloved unit, storying through listening means you dance again.